Alright, live again to start another day of Odinmade Hero. Looks like we're gonna be able to kick off day 35, but I have no idea if I'll be able to work through even half of the coding today because I was forced to start late due to some unfortunate circumstances, but it is what it is. And so, not going to be able to go nearly as long as I did yesterday. But that's fine. We'll just do whatever it is we can. There were some things that Casey covered in the end of the previous day, day 34, regarding how the arena that we hand-rolled ourselves in that day kind of works, and also I was able to discover an issue where I thought I had done the structure of these tile chunks correctly, or rather the tile map. I thought that Casey made this just a single tile chunk, but it turns out it was a pointer to many tile chunks. I'm not sure how I missed that or when that changed, or maybe it was always like that, but basically, in C he has a multi-pointer like so, and in Odin I would do it like this, but because I didn't even see that it was a pointer, I just left it as the object. Or maybe I did have it as just like a pointer to a single tile chunk. So that cleared up some confusion towards the end of yesterday. If I can... Is that right? Is that how I had that? Where, I was trying to... And I think this was it right here. Yeah, this looks right. I was trying to access tiles off of the singular tile chunk, and I remember kind of scratching my head about that. I was like, why do we have just one list of tiles, one slice of tiles on one tile chunk? It's because we have to have many chunks. So that was just, I don't know why that went down the way it did. I just got confused. There's so many references to tile on the screen right now, so I'm inundated by tile stuff, and so I can only chalk it up to that I just got confused and did not register that. But that looks good now. That's closer to Casey's code, although we're still indexing into it like it's a slice rather than a pointer, because we're not dealing with pointers. Because, I have to stress the point again about pointers and how we're not using them, not multi-pointers. Slices everywhere. So anyway, that's that, but that wasn't all. So we got the tiles being allocated correctly after Casey showed me how to implement, he calls it a push array, but I was calling it push slice. So we did this on stream, but I didn't quite get around to this. And originally I was calling it push array, but let's call it what it is. I'm pushing a slice when I go to allocate. I can't remember what we were using this for, and I don't know why I have two. In fact, this is just bad. This, I'm pretty sure, is not supposed to be there. That push struct proc that was being wrapped got turned into a push size proc. And now that push size proc is called by both push struct and push slice, where again Casey's using push array because he's actually pushing like a fixed array, whereas he's pushing a fixed array size into the arena with this call, right? We're passing this arena in, and rather than returning a pointer to that, which I think is what he was doing, I do what I had to do a few days ago with the hard-coded 2D array, and I had to cast that to a multi-pointer and then take the slice up to the length of the bounds. But this is kind of not great. Again, having to use multi-pointers, I keep hammering this home. I think it is fine because it does exactly what we expect it to do, but it just feels weird we're specifying the length of the slice in here, and then we say, you know, give me the length times the size of the thing that we're trying to get stored in the arena and all this stuff. So I was just looking at this, and I decided that I wanted to investigate more into Odin's arenas to see if I could just drop in a replacement allocator using one of Odin's arenas in place of rolling our own. I'm hoping that won't come back to bite me down the line. I'm starting to see that I don't think it will. At least I hope it won't. And to that end, I'm going to keep these procs around because Casey might add another one. I'm not sure. I'm not sure if he ever adds another proc that wraps the push size call that actually allocates that chunk of the arena for the thing that we want. But this way, wherever he's using it, we can just kind of evaluate whether that'll work with using one of Odin's built-in arenas. And we'll figure that out pretty quick when we go to implement the thing and it just breaks because we can't use it the way we think we want to. So yeah, I'm gonna leave all of this around here, but I think I can add a to-do that basically says get rid of this hand-rolled arena code once we're sure we're comfortable sticking to Odin's virtual arena. And so the question that I was asking myself on stream is like, which virtual arena do I use? I don't know. I was reading about static and growing arenas, and I saw that static kind of just sounded like the thing that we wanted because that's what Casey does the handmade way. He just gets that chunk of memory, and then that chunk of memory never shrinks or grows over the course of the game the way that Casey's working on. He gets it with virtual alloc, calling the Win32 call the virtual alloc, and then just hands that memory off to the game, and then the game allocates everything it does using this custom arena code. And I'm sure that works fine. I mean, obviously it works fine for Casey, but I was really, you know, trying to push myself to get comfortable with Odin's built-in arena stuff because I think we get a lot of powerful introspection using those features, like taking the context allocator, and I'll get to this in a second, and, you know, assigning it to a new allocator that handles the memory that we want to allocate for our game and the way that we want to allocate it. Howdy, Devil. Thanks for dropping in as always. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm at. I'm going to let this code sit here. Thankfully, I can let it sit here unused, and the compiler will not complain at me the way Zig would. I think if I had unused procs or unused functions, Zig would bark at me for not using them but defining them. So I could be wrong on that. I just know, like, for instance, if I wasn't using a procedure parameter, then Zig would always get mad at me, and it was kind of a pain. I'd have to go and, like, silence it out every single time, like so. And so yeah, so that leaves the question of what arena I actually wanted to use to do things, you know, the Odin way with context.allocator. And we don't necessarily have to do it that way, but it just seemed really neat. It just seems like that's exactly what we should do because you know, when I read about people who are more familiar with Odin than I am and how they choose to go about dealing with the context allocator or the temp allocator for that matter, it just seems like that is the way you want to try and go if it makes sense. If it doesn't make sense, then I think it would be obvious. But because there's no reason for it to not make sense, that's why I'm going to do it, if that makes any sense. So I was looking at it I was looking in the Odin source code, and I realized that default, because what was tripping me up a little bit is that the default allocator in just a fresh Odin program, if I go into my main here and I go to like one of my make calls, what I was trying to really understand well is like, what is the default allocator being used? And I guess I could have just, run my program and inspected the context.allocator, but I actually went through the Odin source code trying to understand the internals of this stuff a bit better for myself. And that's where I discovered, at least I'm pretty sure this is the case, that Odin's default context allocator is a heap allocator, and it calls heap alloc for instance on Windows, which, depending on the size you're allocating, it'll just make a call to virtual alloc anyways. So I decided I'm not going to mess with that, but it's once we get into the game code, and that's also more in line with what Casey's doing. That's where we use our own arena, which we kind of are. We're going to set it up ourselves and initialize it ourselves, but it's not going to be the hand-rolled one that Casey shows us how to implement. So I looked again at the kinds of arenas that we could use, and then again, I mentioned these several times. Growing and static. Growing will grow, whereas static will just stay the same size. And I guess if you try to allocate more memory than was reserved to be used by the arena, then it'll fail. But then I saw this, and I had seen it before, but I forgot about it. The buffer kind of arena. And I think if I go to arena init buffer, it is the kind of arena that takes a user-provided byte, which is exactly what I get when I go to make the big chunk of memory that gets handed off to the game down here. Right, in fact, that's what I'm using for pretty much all of the slices that I'm allocating, except for, I think, the sound samples one. So we get this big game memory block that's just a buffer, right, a slice, whatever terminology you want to use, and we hand it off to the game whenever we call game update and render, right? So we're passing it in there. So I think that's all making a good deal of sense to me at this point. I talked it all through because I'm not even sure. I have to reinforce this for myself time and again, because if I'm going to make a change like this, because it feels like a big diversion from the way Casey is doing things, at least more than just using one of Odin's built-in math procs, right? Or not built-in, but core math package procs, whatever vocabulary you want to use is fine by me. So to do that, to use one of Odin's virtual arenas, I just went ahead and imported that virtual package from core mem, and then I passed the game state's world arena to it, which if I go and look at that, that is now, why is this so hard? Just show me the definition of my struct. Instead of using this custom arena that we built with Casey yesterday, I'm now using this virtual arena as the world arena. Now, I think we might run into a bit of a snag once we decide we want more than one arena to hang around in the game state. And I'm not sure how to handle that yet. I hope the answer will become clear to me as we move forward, but I'm really just kind of flying by the seat of my pants here. So what I wound up doing, right, is we have to initialize the buffer arena, right, by passing in the game states member. And then rather than passing in the size like we do here, right, because we already have that size implicitly, because we can just index into the game memory past the size of the game state, right, which is after, the game state is right at the very beginning of that big chunk of memory we're allocating. And so we just jump beyond that in the permanent storage of the game memory, and then that's going to be our arena that gets assigned to this member right here. But then we have to actually create the allocator from that arena, and then we assign that allocator to the current context allocator. And then every allocation from this point on, we'll go ahead and use our arena to allocate things. Now I have to do this twice, right? I have to do it when we initialize the game memory. And then further down here, if I can figure out, where was that? It's down past all this Tilemap stuff that we set up when we initialize the game. So we have to do the same thing here. We get the allocator from the world arena, and then we assign it to the context. So, and we have to do that because otherwise it'll only happen on the first run when we're initializing all of that game state, right? But if we dynamically, over the course of the game, you know, after startup, want to start allocating more things, then we still need to do this down here. Now, and I don't even know if there's another place. Yeah, there's no other place in the game code where the arena is being used, but I wanted to throw that down there because I'm pretty sure that will come up. And when it does, again, if we have to use a separate arena, I'm not sure what that'll look like. But it may mean, all it would really mean, I guess, is that when we go to allocate something, we would just manually pass in that other arena, right? So what is the benefit of all of this actually? Now that we've set up a virtual arena with Odin using the buffer type of arena or kind of arena, it means now I don't have to call this stuff up here, right? I don't have to call push struct and then pass in the arena by address and then the type. I can just say, give me a new world and allocate it using that arena, which is now, you know, the current context allocator. Same thing with the tile map. And then same thing with the tile chunks over here, except we use make. If it's plural, it's make. If it's singular, it's new. And then down here, when we're making all the tiles within each tile chunk, we also call make. And so this just kind of cleans things up. You can see all these calls to the handmade code that I commented out. We get to just pull out of there. And then when I actually go to run it, moment of truth, if I haven't left something in a broken state, we're good to go. It all works the same. And this is the same state that Casey left off in the previous day, day 34. And so I'm feeling good about this. I didn't expect it to work the first try. I assumed that something about my understanding of how the context allocator works or how arenas work, I assumed something about that was flawed. But it all seems pretty locked into me. It's working, and we're good to go. So the other benefit of this is that now every single proc that gets called after we set the current context allocator will use that allocator. So if I were in set tile, if I was inside of set tile here and we needed to do on-demand tile chunk creation, we can just make that chunk rather than having to pass in the world arena, you know, and that's just a more explicit way, right? Like this is how Zig would have you do it. You wouldn't be able to implicitly pass in an arena that can do allocations because there's just no such thing in Zig, right? The context stuff is all Odin specific, and I'm trying to do things the Odin way because I'm writing all this in Odin, and there you go. Yeah, it always works until it doesn't. If it all of a sudden stops working and blows up, then we can troubleshoot that and try and figure out a way to get the virtual arena we're now using that Odin gives us. We can figure out how to make it work. It'll get dicier as time goes on, and I'm having to like pull out structs from that arena where all the entities are stored and things like that, but I think it'll be okay. I think I'll find a way around, and if not, I still have this handmade arena code that I can fall back on if I absolutely had to. But hopefully we won't, and we'll be good to go. So with all of that out of the way, we can start day 35, which is, I think, where we're going to start the sparse tile map stuff. So that'll be fun. Make sure everything looks good. Okay. Fire away, Casey.
And stop, and go ahead and get rid of that. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Handmade Hero Morning Edition. It is very good to see all of you bright and early here, 10 a.m. Friday morning here in sunny Seattle, Washington. I guess what I should say today is we are kind of wrapping up a little bit of what we were doing. Obviously, Handmade Hero, for those of you just joining us, is a show where we create an entire game from scratch using nothing but our bare little typey fingers, no engine, no libraries, so that we can kind of see everything that's involved in the full stack of game development, see how it works at a really low level, and basically gain a good understanding and have a lot of fun in the process too. It's just fun to kind of be able to do everything yourself and see how it works. It's just kind of got this really nice feel to it, right? It's like doing that woodworking project or whatever that you always wanted to do. It just has this kind of great feel to make something directly where you know that you were kind of making it all from scratch yourself. If you are following along with the series at home and you have pre-ordered the game on handmadehero.org, you should have gotten a link in your email. That link has a zip file with every day's source code. Today's day 35, so if you want to follow along, unzip day 34 into a directory and you'll be exactly where I am today. And where I am today is we were just finishing up sort of making our virtualized Tilemap system sort of work for reals, in a sense that you can actually have sort of a large world with little sections that are stored by the Tilemap. That is what we were doing, and we were almost there. Yesterday we introduced the concept of a memory arena where we sort of basically put stuff into our permanent store, and I'd like to go ahead and sort of dive back into that today and kind of talk about it a little bit and sort of talk about how it's working and where it's going. All right, so let's go ahead and see where we were at. I'll just load up the code here. And run the old game. So we basically didn't have a chance to actually make a world at all. We only had a chance to kind of slap down some stuff. So maybe what we should do before we do anything else is just kind of make it so that we're actually making some rooms for our little guy to be in. That's something that seems like a pretty reasonable thing to do, I would say. So let's go ahead and try that. So on startup, basically what happens is we have this thing that was looping over 32 screens by 32 screens, and then it was just kind of setting tile values, and it was setting them totally randomly. So what I might like to do is just set some walls in here. And so maybe I'm going to go ahead and say that whatever the tile value is, that tile value will default to be nothing, but if the tile x equals 0, let's say, or the tile x equals tiles per width minus 1, so if it's on either edge of the screen, we are going to say that the tile value should be 1, so there'll be a blocker there. So that's basically making our horizontal walls, and then we can also make our vertical walls the same way, essentially, and this should make rooms, I think, oops, I've got to actually use that tile value. This should make rooms, I think, that are sealed, right? It should make rooms that we cannot get out of, that we're kind of just stuck in, and there you go. We can't actually get out of them, and you can see that this is kind of like a room.
Our first procedurally generated room. I guess it's not really that procedural, is it? Is it still hard-coded? I mean, we're specifying some logic for it to be hard-coded, but it still is very much hard-coded. There's no RNG here, but I can't remember if he introduces that for the tile map generation. I think we do at some point. That should be tile. And is that all he did? Well, he has to set the tile value. So if we, yeah, I don't know why. I don't even need to look. I know what he's trying to do. We want walls on every edge, right? So if we're at the base of the tile, or the base of the screen, right? The base of the screen X, going all the way across, we want a wall. And then same if we're at the very edge of the width or the height. This should be Y. I think that might catch us up with him. Unless I did something completely wrong. Well, I have to pass in the tile value. Did all that. I pulled a Casey. I didn't pass in the tile value. There we go. Yay, we have rooms. Nothing super fancy, but it works. 4 times nested for loop is quite the beast to look at. Yeah, I think I remember reading a lot of people criticizing him for using pretty dense for loops, but you know, in Odin, it doesn't look that bad. I'm sure it would look that much more gross, and it does look pretty rough on Casey's end, but I just feel like this is not all that bad. I can pretty easily figure out what's going on looking at this, but it is hard to, it's actually like the problem space of like you're thinking of constructing this 2D room, right, for each tile, for each screen's width of tiles, screen's width and height of tiles. It's just a weird problem space to start transforming your thinking into, I guess.
Like we used to have, right, this sort of thing, but we don't have any doors yet. So all we kind of really have to do here is make some doors. So let's go ahead and make some doors real quick. How do we want to make doors? Well, I guess in here we'll say that if the tile y equals tiles per height over 2, then we don't want to make the door, then we do want to make the door, and if not, then we don't. And the same will be true for our tile x. right? If it's going to be tiles per width over 2, then it's right in the middle, so we'll make that door. And I think that should basically make doors for us everywhere so that we can, if we want to. And I think
I fumbled over my typing so badly just then that I didn't get any of that out. So yeah, if we're halfway across the wall in the X direction, then set that to 0. Yeah. Well, okay. I mean, this kind of accomplishes the same thing, does it not? I guess I'll just do it the way he's doing it for posterity. And then we do the same thing over here, but for X across the width. And that should give us some doors, right? Yeah. We can escape. Can't hold me down. And now I'm back in. So now all we have is just this massive massive tile map where it's just empty rooms and doors into more empty rooms forever.
That should basically make doors for us everywhere so that we can, if we want to, walk through things. Now we should basically have sort of this really, really large world, and of course I can speed sort of through it. We now just have room upon room upon room of stuff in there with nothing in particular going on or happening in any of these rooms. We should be able to get to the end of it. We only made, what, 32 of these? How many did we make? I don't actually remember how many of these we made. 32. So if we walk 32 of these forwards, which is a lot of them, we would eventually get to the end, but I don't think I'm going to sit here and do that. So anyway, that makes room.
Okay, never mind. I thought it was a lot more than 32, but I guess it was just 32. Was it 32? Where did we specify that? Did he calculate some math? I don't know. I'm not going to get hung up on it. It doesn't matter.
Rooms and rooms and rooms and rooms for us to go through, which is all well and good. Excuse me. But now what we want to do is we want to make it so that maybe we basically have only rooms. We don't have just a full grid. We want to start testing our sparseness. You know what I'd like to do too? Actually, let's do this as well.
That's right, Devil. We actually could just implement a draw circle call at this point, and then start going to town on Pac-Man. Get like a draw ghost call to make like a little, what would it be? It'd be like a circle on the top and then a rectangle on the bottom. We could totally do that. We have the power, but we're not going to.
Let's actually try something here just to see what would happen. Let's actually try doing something that will totally tank our frame rate, probably because of the slow way that we've done things here, because we're just kind of looping over everything. What if we were to go ahead and actually make the tile size much smaller and draw a lot more of them? So for example, up here, remember the thing that determines how big our world is, we have our tile side in pixels, right? We have our tile side in pixels here and our meters to pixels. If we were to make the pixels extremely small, let's say we were to be able to fit 10 times more of them in there, so we made our tile side in pixels be only 6, right? We could go in here and there, so we made
Okay. So much smaller tiles then.
Our tile side in pixels be only 6, right? We could go in here and we could query a lot more pixels. In fact, you can kind of see what happens if I just do that. You notice we're just drawing a very small version of our tile map.
Will that work for me? I don't see why not. If we've done everything right, yeah, it should pretty much just do what Casey's does. And it does. So far, so good. Happy about it.
Excuse me. And so now the question is, what could I do? Could I go in there and basically just draw a much larger version of the map? So to do that, I just have to actually pull more, and we'll want to be doing a lot more stuff than we're doing here. So these are just debug drawing routines. But anyway, if I go...
It's funny you mentioned that. Devil said, I watched someone recreate the Ghost AI from Pac-Man, and they all have incredibly fascinating behavior. I remember like feeling that way playing Pac-Man as a kid. And I think it's part of why that game has so much staying power, right? There's just something about the loop that's really good, the way that the ghosts respond, and you really feel like they're working hard to corner you, and then it's so satisfying to get the whatever it is, it's like a star or something, right? And then you can eat the ghosts, you get your counterattack going. That always feels good.
Go ahead here now. Again, this is really inefficient what we're doing, but you can see that we basically have our entire map being drawn now. Well, not our entire map, but a much larger version of it.
I see what he did. So rather than have, large tiles that then are kind of making the appearance of the game world equally as big, divide the size of the tiles by 10 and then multiply the extent to which we're drawing by 10, and we get right back out to filling. So it's just like we have a different perspective on the world. We can zoom way out doing that.
so we can kind of see what's going on. Now, what I would like to do, I guess, at this point, is say if a section of the tile map was not initialized, so there isn't anything in it, I'd like to draw that in something other than gray, just so that we can see it, or rather, have some way of knowing what it is. Because right now, when there's nothing in the tile map, we just return 0. And so you can kind of see, for example, that I'm like kind of off in space there. So maybe, I don't know, one thing that we might want to do is start to talk about is there a concept of an invalid tile, so we can kind of see where our tile map just doesn't have anything. Because out here, there was nothing, we didn't initialize it, but we're just returning 0 whenever we look for a tile chunk and don't find one there, right? So what I wanted to do is kind of say, all right, well, maybe, if the tile map comes back 0, right? Let's say that we basically have something where we get the tile value, and if the tile ID is going to be greater than 0, so 0 will actually mean there's nothing there at all, and we just won't draw anything, right? Now, unfortunately, so far we've had 0 in our tile map. 0 has meant nothing, excuse me, 0 has meant that it was walkable, so I'm just going to go ahead and arbitrarily, because so far we've had...
Just want to make sure I don't miss where he's wrapping this in. So 0 is basically there's no tile here, and it's just everything. We skip the draw, we skip all of this calculation of the bounds of the thing we're drawing. We don't need to draw anything. Cool.
And we just won't draw anything, right? Now, unfortunately, so far we've had 0 in our tile map. 0 has meant nothing. Excuse me, 0 has meant that it was walkable. So I'm just going to go ahead and arbitrarily, because I can, and we haven't thought about this at all, obviously. I'm going to go ahead and set these to basically be 1 and 2. Eventually, we're going to have to think about what we actually want to store on our tiles. Right now, I'm just randomly slapping number codes in there, completely willy-nilly. So I'm just going to go ahead and do that. So now we have 0 means there's nothing there, 1 means it was walkable, 2 means that it was a wall. And so I'll go into the tile map now, and all I really have to do is that isTileEmpty thing. And this is a good example of why we'd want to start having enums for these, but this code's, I'm sorry, these tile storage is not really going to be how we're ever going to store tiles. We're going to have a lot more data than a uint32 probably, so it's not that interesting to start defining enums and stuff, but...
I did not even change this proc name. This is supposed to be isTileMap.empty. I want to just look and see what are all of my references to world. I feel like this recanonicalized stuff, yep, that should be tilemap. I was just getting fatigued by having to make these changes towards the end of the last stream, and I was desperate to like finish on some kind of a W. I was determined to finish in the broken state that we finished in. What are you talking about now? Is world point empty? Oh yeah, well of course we changed the name of the proc. We got to change everything that calls it, which I'm guessing is, that's in the game package. World point, yeah. And now we're good. Oh no, that's very red. Okay, yeah.
I suspect now, yeah, there. So now we can kind of see what's going on. I suspect now, so...
I did something wrong. What did I do wrong?
Not that interesting to be how we're ever going to store these, but this code's, I'm sorry, these tile storage is not really going to be how we're ever going to store tiles. We're going to have a lot more data than a uint32 probably.
I think
so it's not that interesting.
Yeah, he just changes that to 1 to represent empty. That was the whole reason we went over there. Whoops. Change that to match the new empty tile value. Or just screw it up. Did I not save it right? What's going on? Oh no. Oh, that's a problem. Why is that not working? We should have a bunch of nice gray tiles in the center of our rooms. So this just sets it to white. Yeah. Why is it not getting in here? Maybe over here somewhere I did something. I think this needs to be set to 1. Is that the problem? That needs to default to 1. Yeah. Did he not change that? Do I have to make this U32? I do. I figured. I just wanted to check. Oh yeah, he did
obviously.
change that.
I'm gonna go.
Okay. I'm silly. Wasn't paying attention.
What's going on, right? We can see that there's nothing in the world out there. We haven't actually defined a tile chunk for those locations, because remember, this down here is 0, 0. Actually, we started the guy out pretty close to it. So back here is like some really high number. This is like 4 billion. That tile is 4 billion, 4 billion, right? Because the world is toroidal, like I said, it wraps around. And so now you can kind of see roughly where we have defined the world and where we haven't. And so that's kind of just a nice sort of thing to kind of understand, if that makes sense. So going through here, what I am now thinking we should do is we should actually only make rooms in some places. Now, what I'd like to do is start talking about random numbers, but it might be a little premature. Again, this is a place where we could lean on the C runtime library so that I don't have to teach random numbers just yet, and we could still have them. But we would like to have some way of making... Oh, you know what? No, there's an easier way to do random numbers that doesn't involve me leaning on the C runtime library that we can do. Okay, so there you can see I walked to the end of it. We've walked 32 up. So there you go. So what I'd like to do now is maybe do something where we kind of have a random... a random number sort of thing that happens. What I'd like to do is basically say, okay, before what we were doing is we were doing something where was I? Handmade.cpp. We were basically just looping over the screens 32 by 32, and we were just making a new screen. What I'd like to do now is just say instead, I'm going to do a number of screens, right? I'm going to do screen index equals 0. I'm going to do screen index less than 100. So I'm going to make 100 screens. But I'm not going to say where they are. So we'll start out by saying that our screen X and our screen Y are at 0, 0. But instead of looping over it, I'm just not going to say where the screens are. So we're going to make a screen at the location that we're at. But then...
All right, so you'll be so happy to see that instead of 4 nested for loops or 4 for loops deep, we're going to pull this out and make it 3. So slightly less foring, if you will. What was that? I think these are just initialized to 0. We'll do that. It's nice multi-line declaration. I see stuff like that, and then I just want to start doing it everywhere, but it's like, what's the point? Why do I feel compelled to make pointless changes? It's just... See? I do it in one place, I want to do it everywhere. And I feel so smart for doing it that way. It's not that smart. Just leave the code alone.
Then we're going to choose to move...
Sometimes it's fine. Sometimes the code is fine.
...to a different screen based on some kind of random number, okay? Okay. Sorry, I just took a look at the screen, and I noticed people talking about the art. And yes, I'm excited to get to the art. That'll probably be happening very soon now. I just had a bunch of stuff I kind of want to go through with you before we start dealing with the renderer. But yeah, the artist for the game, Yangshin Lee, is awesome. I'm really, really glad that she was interested in working on the project because her art is fantastic. Yeah, the stuff for the game has just looked absolutely gorgeous. So I think the game will look absolutely beautiful. Yeah, I'm glad you guys think so as well because I thought her stuff was really, really quite fantastic. Anyway, moving on. So here we are. We're going to do this number screen. So what we'll do is we'll lay out the same thing we did, just a room with some doors in it. And then what we're going to do is say, okay, from there, I'm just going to randomly move one of the two. I'll either increment screen X or I'll increment screen Y, but not both of them. So I'll basically do like if random number, something like this, equals 0, like that. Or I should say, if random choice equals 0, else do this. So we'll do screen X plus equals 1, or screen Y plus equals 1. So we'll just kind of go in whatever direction.
Why not? Screen X goes up by 1. And screen Y goes up by 1.
And that is it. So now we just need a way of making a random choice, right? We need to be able to make a random choice somehow so that we can get something that allows us to pick randomly whether we want to go to the right one or up one, right, with our room. So we're going to start out, we're going to make a room, then we're going to choose to either make a room to the right of it or the room above it. That's all we're doing here, right? Very, very simple. So what we'd like to do is figure out how to make a random choice. Now, normally the way random numbers work, and like I said, we won't really get into random numbers just yet. We'll be making our own random number generator once we actually start doing the world generation stuff for real. But at the moment, I just need something so we can kind of splat down rooms in a random pattern and start to see how our Sparse thing is working. So what I want to do here is just sort of point out the fact that, okay, random choice, what I need to do is I need to take a random number and I need to produce one of two options. And so the way that that's typically done is using the mod operator. Now, the mod operator, as we talked about before on the stream, is basically something that does a divide and just talks about the remainder of that divide in integer space. So if I divide something by 2, I know I will either get a 0 or a 1, because the only remainder you can get when you divide something by 2 is 0 or 1, right? That's all that's going to be left, assuming we're talking about positive numbers here. So if I take a random positive number, I divide it by 2, the remainder will either be 1 or 0. It can never be 2, because then we would have had 1 higher when we did the divide, right? So the mod operator is something that takes some random number and turns it into a number of choices for us, and that's exactly what we wanted, right? So all we need to do now is do some random number here. We need to have a way of doing a random number. And what I'm going to do is just avoid the issue altogether for the moment, so we don't have to start talking about random numbers today, because it's not really a good time for it. We want to spend kind of a week talking about them or something at some time in the future. Maybe not a week, but at least a couple days. So I'm just going to have our table of random numbers for now, and then I will just put in to do here. Our random number generator will be something that we'll want to actually do a good job on. Since this game's procedurally generated, we really want a good random number generator, obviously.
So I think he literally just pulls a bunch of random numbers off the internet. If memory serves, I don't want to do that, so I actually am just going to use whatever the first best thing is that I can find inside of Odin's core packages. See if I can find anything that approximates what we're trying to do here. I see runtime random generator. Maybe I should just look in there and see. That has something to do with WASM, but that's not really what I'm looking for. But do I really want to be importing runtime stuff into my game code? Is that a sane thing to do? This doesn't seem like what I want to do. We've got some random generator-y things in here, but maybe I'll just check the docs. Oh, great. Another bot in my chat. Okay. Let's see. Oh dear, that's the wrong thing. I knew I would mess something up. There we go. Didn't mean to show you my Twitch dashboard. Wanted to show you this. So if I go into overview, oh, packages, that's where I meant to go. And then I search for random. Since this is probably an easier way to find what I'm looking for. Well, did that random generator, random number generator, oh, wait, where was that at? Runtime, default, random generator. Oh, default. Like, it's asking for some parameters that I don't want to think about providing. Other than, like, if I saw, like, a seed here, then that would make sense, but math big. Big sounds good. Really? Does it have to be math.big? Can it just be like regular math? I don't know why I didn't bother to check that in the first place. But if we just call math.random, oh no. There's no random inside of regular math. So you need big math to be random, I guess. Why can't I scroll? I don't even know how to scroll anymore. Okay, well, I don't know why this is cracking me up, but we'll just import core math big, and then we'll call Big dot random. How do you like them? Blah, 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 blah. Can't talk. Them apples. So this calls int random. Oh no, that's, yeah. Yep, we're missing some parameters. So I don't know why I didn't bother to look at that proc definition. Maybe I shouldn't think this hard about this right now, but I've never had to generate a random number in Odin, so I'm just like, how do I do this? Yeah, I mean, I could implement my own RNG. I just don't want to take... Like, it's why Casey is saying that he doesn't want to talk about that right now. He just wants to go grab a bunch of random numbers and then, you know, pull them out one index at a time. But I would like to be able to... Where am I? How did I wind up here? I just want to look again... Maybe crypto, random generator. Backed by the system entropy source. Okay. And then this default random generator, is this also in math? This is in runtime. I'm just going to do what I usually do in times like these, and I'm going to peruse the Odin Discord, because I know somebody else has asked this question, and they... Why would I ask it again? You know? That's what the search is for. Okay, how do I generate... Well, let's just type random number. This isn't Stack Overflow. This isn't Google. It's not going to give me that educated of an answer. Okay. Is it just the rand package? How did I miss the rand package? Well, I'm in base. Maybe that's my problem. I meant to ask this in core. Let's just go. Yeah, there we go. Rand? Wow. I am a fool. Great. Big Math has a monopoly on random. Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, that was my mistake. I started looking in the base collection once I started looking at runtime stuff, and I was like, this feels wrong. I should not be touching this right now. Core rand? No. Where is that at? Is it in base? It's in math. Well... What is wrong with me? I just deleted something I shouldn't have deleted. I got rid of the virtual import. Okay, let's try this one more time. Rand dot... Like, isn't it? Yeah, that's what I saw somebody saying you could use. Hey, it's Carl. Carl Zielinski helping me out again from the graveyard of old Discord posts. Actually, this question was asked like a week or two ago, so not that old. But point is, Carl helps me out again by pointing out that this int max proc exists. And it'll just give me a random generator off of the context. Well, that's interesting. I didn't know the context. I suppose I should have bothered to look at what all is involved in the Odin context. That's my next homework assignment for myself. Okay, so I don't know. I guess I'll just use whatever the number size that Casey's big list of random numbers is. I don't know. But I'm not going to implement int max myself. You know what I mean? I just don't care to. But I will be curious to hear Casey's thoughts on RNG, I guess, once we get that far. Where am I? I need to look at my stream again. Carl walked so we could run. That's very much true, it feels. I feel like I'm benefiting a ton from that guy's work that he's put into making these videos that he has on YouTube. He streams sometimes as well. And he's an awesome dude. Definitely, I'm gonna plug him again and drop him in the chat. Not that anybody's necessarily. If you're only familiar with me, then you wouldn't be familiar with him. But if you're familiar at all with Odin, he's been a great advocate for the long range. I don't know that I would have come across it or even tried it if it weren't for seeing the stuff that he's been putting out. I'm sorry I keep messing with my desk. My camera is all... Here, maybe I just raise it. It's like cutting off the top of my head, I notice. And sometimes I start getting animated. I'm like up here in my chair. And then I'm just like, hey guys, what a great stream. Don't you love programming? Okay, that's enough of that.
So what we're going to do is just do this, and I'm going to say that we essentially have a random number table here that we can initialize with a bunch of random numbers, and then we'll have a random number index, and that random number index will start off at 0. And I will also assert here that the random number index is less than the array count of the random number table, and we'll just make sure that we make a big enough random table to have all the randomness that we need for now. Again, not a particularly glorious or beautiful solution, but that is just what we have to do to get things started. So there's our random number index, and now we will go make our random number table out here. And that can be a internal global. There is our random number table. And our random number table, we can now just go grab a ton of random numbers. I guess there's a easy way to do this on random.org usually. I feel like we can typically get them in different formats as well. Where is it? Lists and more. No, numbers, integers, integer sets. Here we go. Switch to advanced mode. We want hexadecimal. We want values between 1 and 4 billion, ideally. Actually, I guess they could even be 0. We would like to generate, I don't know, let's get at least one full 4096 load of those, maybe. We could even get more than that if we wanted to. I'd like 4 billion in here to be the largest, so let's go ahead and actually get the exact 4 gigabyte number, 4 times 1024 times 1024 times 1024. So I'd like that to be the largest. There we go. And we can go ahead and format those in 8 columns. So let's see, bare bones text document. Let's see, get numbers.
Well, I guess I'll just plug this in real quick. 4096, he said. That's the number of random numbers he's grabbing. That's just the, well, yeah. No, so, I'm sorry. I should actually use what he's using in the context that he's generating these random numbers. He's using a really big number. How do you calculate that again? 10, 20, what is it, 2096, 2048, 1026. That is right? No. Why am I thinking this hard?
Let's see, get numbers. Actually, get the exact 4 gigabyte number, 4 times 1024 times 1024.
2048. Yes, 1020. Yeah, it's because I can't do arithmetic. It's 1024, not 1026. Is that what I kept saying? So he did 4 by 1024 by 1024. And so was he calculating a gigabyte?
Get the large to I'd like 96 load of those, maybe. Let's get at least one full 4096 load of those, maybe. We could even get more than that if we wanted to. I'd like 4 billion in here to be the largest. So let's go ahead and actually get the exact 4 gigabyte number, 4 times 1024 times 1024 times 1024. So I'd like that to be the largest. There we go. And we can go ahead and format those in 8 columns. So
I just want to know what this value is. I think I left out a 1024 too. No, I want to put that in my clipboard. Now I want to search it. That looks like the same number. That is a gigabyte, right? Oh, that's half a gigabyte. Why do I care? Yeah, we'll just do that, right? Screen index is not used. Oh, okay. Maybe we just don't use it. Nice. Okay. I was just like too curious to find out if this would actually work. And I got hung up on the seed here. Or not the seed, because it's not the seed, right? I think the seed is generated and given to us in the context random generator, which is just awesome. And then this will be a different thing every time. Or will it not? Without changing the seed. Maybe we have to do something. We need to, maybe we need to make our own generator to get something different each time. Oh no, it is different every single time. That definitely looked different. Okay, interesting.
Let's see. Bare bones text document. Let's see. Get number.
Create a face tracking bozo. Face tracking camera. I feel like wouldn't it lose focus on me? I don't want to deal with that. And I'm definitely not doing that using assembly. I will never use assembly if I don't have to. I might have to at some point. But Zig made it fairly easy, and I tried doing it once with Odin, but surely I didn't know what the hell I was doing. I do think that it'll be a little bit more headache to figure out in Odin, because you can do inline assembly in Zig. You can just, specify inline assembly or something like that, and then start typing in the names of your registers and, whatever operation it is you're trying to do, right?
Oh, seriously, guys? Seriously? All right, fine. Yeah, that's right, 1 minute. All right. Why is that? I have no idea why that would be. But let's go ahead and just accept our limitations, because again, this is only a temporary solution. So I guess that'll be fine.
That's why I should not have cared. He wound up having to change that to, what is that? What is that, 100 million? Oh yeah, it says it right there. No, it says that's 1 billion, right? Okay. Why did I do this to myself? I don't know. 1 and then billion, right? I can't add commas, can I? Or can I? Yeah, I mean, because that's now it thinks I'm giving it. Yeah, obviously it would think I'm giving it 4 parameters. What's wrong with me? Oh, jeez. This email I got before the stream has just melted my brain. I had to go and get a bunch of documents, information, and provide it as fast as I possibly could, and it really stressed me out. So
we've got all our stuff in here. Get numbers. There we go. So there's our random numbers, right? They're lovely. They're a little smaller than I would have
it's just a fun part of being an adult.
liked, but I can go ahead and cut and paste those in here, and now I've got some entropy. And entropy is always kind of good. So now I will go through and just format this in a way that actually would allow us to compile it. This is a good case for, again, the C macros. So let's say that we have something that looks like this. I will go ahead and start my macro recording. I will come out here, delete that, put a comma in there. Come out here, delete that, put a comma in there. Come out here, delete that, put a comma in there. Oops, that's not good. Let's try this one more time. Oh, I'm not doing very well today. Not a good editing day, people. Not a good editing day at all for Casey. All right. This might still work, though. No, it doesn't. Let's try that one more time. You know it's a good day if the keyboard macro goes right the first time, and you know it's a bad day if it don't, right? All right, so let's try that again. Do this, forwards, comma, oops. Wow, it's like I can't even type. I don't know what's going on, people. I do not know.
Watching him go through this is actually making me feel a little bit better about everything that I just went through. Yeah, the next 3 days are just him going... enter comma, enter comma, enter comma.
No. All right, let's try that one more time. How hard could it be? Really. Shouldn't be that hard.
Like, I get the, idea. Handmade, right? Do everything yourself. But, God, I just would have used whatever, C standard library thing would have given me the RNG. At least until I was, like, ready to address that, I don't know.
I'm being completely silent here so I don't mess it up. All right. Okay. There we go. Oh, you know what I forgot? And I forgot to put the OX in there, so I'm going to have to do this again. So you'll get to see me make another keyboard macro where I'll probably mess it up. So, yeah, not a good editing day. Maybe it's because it's Friday. Maybe it's because it's early in the morning. Maybe it's because the coffee has not kicked in yet. I'm drinking coffee almond milk this morning. Homemade. Quite tasty. Yeah. What can I say? I like me some almond milk. All right, so let's go ahead and... You notice how slow Emacs is doing this? It's kind of crazy, Call of Duty can render 30 or 60 nowadays photorealistic frames per second. Emacs can't apply a keyboard macro in less than a second. It's kind of amazing. ladies and gentlemen. Kind of amazing.
All right, I'm gonna try and fast forward through this. Because I remember now that, like, it's just too many numbers. Look at that. We're still going. Oh, and then he had to throw the 0x in front of them. Why was that? You know what? I don't care. It's fine. You don't need to know everything. I think his editor just stops working.
I reported this, by the way. Well, actually, some people later to indent 500 lines of code. Ugh. Pain and suffering. How is it possible, people? Look at this. So embarrassing, right? Just so embarrassing. I reported this, by the way. Well, actually, a viewer actually was reporting this. A Handmade Hero person, when I was complaining about how slow Emacs is, I sent them a file where this kind of thing happens. And the main...
I'm so glad that this is the day that this happened to him. It's just exactly what I needed. There's just something about how quintessentially software this is, that he tries to enter in all of these numbers manually, and he just gets stuck trying to do that because his editor freezes, where I was getting stuck trying to figure out the math of the thing he was calculating just for him to have to, you know, change the value 2 seconds later. It's just, there's something universally recognizable as just using the human experience of using software is just so much of this right here that he's dealing with. Oh, it just froze, it stopped working, you know, restart it, start over.
Maintainer said it's unreasonable to expect it to go any faster. That's what the Emacs people wrote back. I'm not kidding. I guess I just don't understand how computers work or something. I don't know. It's awful. Anyway, so here we are at our random number table situation. We got to include it, obviously. So we have to go in here and do handmade random.h, kind of put that in there. We'll deal with that later. Let's see. What is our problem here? Oh, I think, what did I actually call this? I think I just called it global variable or something like that. Yeah. So now we have something random we can look at. So what we're going to do here, like I said, is our routine now is going to do its little, it's going to basically do the same thing it was doing to make a screen. But instead, you can see when it comes in here, right, it's going to actually, after it's done, right, here's it making the screen, right, setting the tile values for one screen. After it's done making the tile for one screen, it's going to go here, it's going to get a random choice, it's going to use that to decide which one of these it does, and hopefully, you know, it makes a different one every so often. Let's see if that's actually true. Let's see here, random choice 0. Yeah, so it's doing what it's supposed to do, and then we're just going to increment one of the two values differently depending on it. And so there you go. We've now made exactly what I kind of wanted to make there. We've made sort of a random thing where we have all of our rooms kind of laid out in a random fashion, right? They kind of just kind of go up. Now, you know, this is not a good random algorithm for laying out rooms because it can't even double back on itself. I just wanted something that would create a shape that wasn't a block, right? That wasn't just a solid block. And you can kind of see how that's working here. But now what we need to do is I also want to draw where there are and aren't tile maps for the world, right? I want to be able to draw locations where there are and aren't where there is and isn't storage. So in addition to uninitialize, I also want to draw, you know, sort of see where the storage is, if that makes sense. And so what I'm going to do for that is I'm going to say that whenever we make a tile map, for now, right here, where we actually create all of our tile chunks, right here, I'm actually going to also go ahead and just initialize them all, right? So I'm going to say that we basically have our tile count, and our tile count is this thing, right? This is how many tiles there are per chunk in our tile map. What I'm going to do is I'm going to spin over that...
Pull that out real quick. Thought about making these variable names myself, or at least this one in particular. Like, same thing over here, right? Like, this is our tile map... or tile chunk count, right? The total of it. It seems reasonable to me to make that change, and I think I'm gonna go ahead and do it. Because I didn't like how I was having to do this anyway. Like, you can see the amount of breaking up of this one call to make that I'm having to do. And yeah, it's because my code is really big. I've got very big code. I've got the biggest code. And so... I hate that I bring it up every single stream. I can't help but be like, look how big my code is. I'm not used to this. I was getting better, and then I couldn't keep it going for just one more day. I don't think I brought it up yesterday. No, I probably did. So there's something about this experience that's streaming programming that is making me realize just how insane what I do to make a living is at times. And it makes sense why people don't like tech people all that much all of a sudden, right? Because we're all weird. Okay. Neat. Okay, just want to make sure I didn't blow up those numbers pulling that out. Very simple change, but it's so easy
that
to mess
whole
things
set of
up.
tiles, right? So there's the tile count. I'm going to spin over the whole set of tiles, and I'm going to initialize them all to 0, so that we can see where our tiles are and aren't, if that makes sense. So our tile chunks, tile index equals 0, right? Like that.
So pull the tile count out, and then tile count. And then, so yeah, instead of doing this down here, right? Wait, where was that? He pulls, well, he sets it here. No, hold on. I did not follow that change. I did a bad job. I did bad. So he makes the tile chunks. Yeah, no, so that's right there. He didn't even change that part, I don't think. And then we take out the tile count. We make the tile count. So yeah, he didn't change that. He just went over and defaulted them all to 0. Are they not already? Maybe I need to hear him explain this again, because I thought everything was already 0 initialized.
In our tile map is this, that we basically have our tile count, and our tile count is this thing, right? This is how many tiles there are per chunk in our tile map. What I'm going to do is I'm going to spin over that whole set of tiles, right? So there's the tile count. I'm going to spin over the whole set of tiles, and I'm going to initialize them all to 0, so that we can see where our tiles are and aren't, if that makes sense. So our tile chunks, tile index equals 0, right? Like that. Excuse me.
I watched it twice, and I still don't really understand why we're doing this. But I also am afraid to not do what he's doing, so I'm just going to do it. Is this right? So we got the chunk index. Right. Okay. Just the way that he's doing this, right? He keeps indexing into tile chunks. Yeah, he's doing it right here again, and it's tripping me up. It's part of the reason why I can't understand why he's doing what he's doing, because he's indexing into tile chunks with the tile index. Oh, I just did this wrong. Wow, I did do it wrong, right? No. Okay, tile count. Okay. Tilemap, tile chunks. No, I'm still lost. Dude, this is the 3rd time. Why do I keep getting tripped up on the way that he is dealing with these chunks? So why is this wrong? We cannot index into... Okay, so he's assigning... Yeah, it has to do with the way that he's allocating it. We need that chunk index. And then we need to access the tiles. It just looks so weird, right? Almost makes me want to go back and look at my decision not to use multi-pointers, because it keeps tripping me up like this. But no, I just need to figure it out and stick with my plan. I thought Big Math had the biggest code. Well, it's a showdown now. When the best way to do your job is to crazily talk to yourself in a dark room for hours on end, then you end up becoming weird. Yeah, it's like a foregone conclusion, right? It was an inevitability. You know, if I didn't have my family, I would just be... I shouldn't be allowed outside. That's what would happen to me. I would just become completely incapable of relating to my fellow human being, because I'd just be in here coding all the time. I'd be able to relate so well to the computers, though. The machine would just, be my best friend. So yeah, I think this is right. I just keep second guessing myself. One, because it looks weird doing these nested indexes on these members here, but I think I get it. We had to calculate the chunk index up here, which I'd already done, but we pulled the tile count out, and I can bring this back up here. Pulled the tile count out, made that its own thing. And the reason why we did that is because we needed to step through every single tile and set it to 0. Again, I still don't quite follow. And this is also wrong, as the language server is pointing out for me here. Cannot iterate over the tile count of type U32. Oh, well. I can just do that, right? Oh, it's because I didn't... Yeah, that's all I needed to do. Didn't write that loop correctly. Yeah. Okay. Well, I'll just let him do his thing, I guess.
Oh, sorry. 1, not 0. No operator found, which takes what? What are you? What? What is the problem here? What did I? What?
I guess that's what he meant to do. So that's setting it all to just floor. Okay. Now I get it. Everything, and then this is why he's starting to go down the road of sparse storage, right? Because the point is, okay. I don't know why I couldn't connect those dots. That was a really dumb moment for me. But the point is, we have all of this that we're allocating, right? Because we need to extend the rooms out in the upward direction and the to the right from the origin of the world. But we don't want to actually store this. And this is just pointing out, hey, you're allocating the space for all of these rooms that the world doesn't need to have in it. Okay, I'm caught up now. I get it.
What did I do? Tile chunks. Oh, right, tiles. It's actually this. So this is tile chunk index.
Do you see what happened just then? Did you see what happened? He literally just ran into the same problem that I was running into, where I was just looking at my code like, what is going on? He has to do the same thing. And of course he has to do the same thing, because tile chunks is a list and tiles is another list. Inside of, each tile chunk has a bunch of tiles. I should have just watched another 5 seconds. Twice in one stream. This is unbelievable.
Here we go. Tile chunk index, like that. So I'm pulling out each individual tile chunk. When I allocate it, I'm going to set it all to 1. And so then when you run it, what you can see is we're not storing anything sparse at the moment, right? We actually did create storage for this whole area. We're just not actually ever writing any walls into it, but we did actually store the whole area. So what we'd like to do is just nominally make this a little sparser now, just using the stupidest possible thing so that we can at least verify that we are sort of doing things in a sparse method. And then we can sort of leave it from then on as a to-do when we're doing the engine proper to actually have a smart sparse storage for things, which you can kind of see what I mean there, right? So what I want to do now is I want to make it so that we only actually start to allocate space for the tiles when we actually need to store tiles there, if that makes sense. Instead of, right now I've got this thing which basically pre-allocates. It's basically as if we just did one giant array. It's not sparse at all. So now it's time. We've done all the work. Now it's time to actually make our tile map sparse, right? And so I'm just going to quickly, because I know this is a lot of stuff for people who've never done this before. So what we were doing, right?
Or in some cases, it's a lot even if you have done it before, because I did all of the same code in Zig, but it was very, I just kind of brushed past it because I wasn't as interested in it, but now I'm like actually trying to kind of master an understanding of what it is we're doing here, and so now I'm getting tripped up on every little detail that I don't understand. And that's how I should have been learning to begin with, to be fair. But I was too fixated on like the end results of the thing, which is just like, I'm gonna, translate this code into Zig and it'll be great, and I'll, make a game. I'm so far away from making a game.
Is we store these tile chunks. A tile chunk right now, I think we set it so that it was basically 16 on a side, is what I believe we set it to. Yeah, that's what we set it to here. And so basically what we were doing is we're creating 16 by 16 chunks. We created, however, 128 by 128 of them. So we basically made a big block of these chunks. And each one of them basically gets filled in, so it's the same.
I never even changed that. If I change that, will that break up my, what? Will that break me? Yep.
We created 60 quickly because I know this is a lot of stuff for people who've never done this before. So what we were doing, right, is we store these tile chunks. A tile chunk right now, I think we set it so that it was basically 16 on a side, is what I believe we set it to. Yeah, that's what we set it to here. And so
I don't know what happened, but I missed that. I missed that he changed the shift to 4 and the tile chunk count X of Y to 128. When did he do that? Ridiculous. I have no idea when he did that.
actually make our tile map sparse, right? And so I'm just going to quickly, because I know this is a lot of stuff for people who've never done this before. So what we were doing, right, is we...
Well, where's that? Looks like I'm firing a bounds check. Assert. So right here, well, which bounds check is it? Am I firing on the chunk index or the tile index? What if I break this up? Will you tell me then? Is there no way to do this? Well, I guess I could say tile chunk. And then I could say tiles, was it? Yeah, we want the tiles. Well, this would be the tile. I don't know why. I just... What is wrong with me? Okay. So it's right here. So we're getting the chunk out okay, which makes sense because we're just iterating over the number of chunks we made. But somehow, even though we're making all of these tiles and they should all be zeroed out, yeah, okay, of course. Now, yeah. That was... So when he set this to 0, I was like, what? And then he set it to 1. That obviously makes more sense. They are zeroed out, so changing this, and that's why I was like, why didn't this change anything? What was the point of making that change? Duh. Okay. I'm officially fully caught up, but I still don't know why we're breaking. It seems reasonable to me. We're saying, here's all the tiles... We're going to allocate them, and then we're going to index into each of them at that chunk index, at that tile index, and set it to 0. So how can the bounds be 0? Tile count should be, you know, what we just set this to, right? No. Okay. What is this? Okay. Yeah. Well, now I'm wondering, is that right? So we get the tile count. I guess he has that ordered down here. Chunk dim times tile map dot chunk dim. That's right. So that should give me a heck of a lot of tiles back. What's the deal? The chunk index. That's right. That's still right. Okay. And we're getting the chunk back out at this index. Maybe I should get it out up here. Well, The only difference in our code is the fact that I'm using make with the allocator that we created from the virtual arena. So maybe I screwed that up somehow. But I feel like it's got to be simpler. The answer's got to be more obvious. Did anybody see what happened? If anything is different. I mean, obviously you can't see Casey's code, but you can see mine. I wonder if the tile chunk we're getting out. Yeah, I think that's all we got to do is print the tile chunk. And I don't have the format package imported. Gotta get that back in. Let's see what we get. Well, that's no good. It's not responding because it's taking all the time to allocate and then print out, well, not just the allocation, not just after this allocation, but every single tile index we iterate over, right? It's printing out the tile chunk. So maybe, well, that's not going to work because I didn't define. Why did that work? Hold on. Okay, I just didn't save it. So if I pull this out, that might help me figure out what I have done wrong. Oh, I wonder if it's because... I think I know what it is. Well, I think I still want to make that change anyway. I didn't take the slice, right? Or no? Maybe it would be this. I think that's what I meant to do. Just a simple pointer deal. I guess I should verify that's the case and run it. Make sure it works before I assume. Darn it! Why didn't I catch that? And I guess I would have if I hadn't. Yeah. So I thought I was cleaning things up, but I just kind of made a fool of myself. I think this works now. Well, I need to get rid. Gotta get rid of that print statement because that was no good. That was dumb. Should never put that in. Format. Banish you. Bring you back in 5 minutes when I break something else. Okay, so we're still not doing things right. All right. Well. Was that not it? Yeah, maybe. I mean, it was all working just fine before. You know what? I just did it to myself again. I think this is the third time I've done this to myself this stream. Right? Wrong? Let's see what happens to Casey's code. Oh my gosh, I'm sorry. I did not bother to change the screen we were on. So what I was just getting upset at myself about was that I forgot to take the reference of the tile chunks. And, well, I forgot to take the reference of the tile chunk at this index in the tile chunks. And therefore I thought, oh, I was just modifying a copy when I was making, well, not making, I was making the tiles, but then I wasn't iterating. Well, actually, yeah, I think I was just modifying a copy, right? But then that doesn't really make sense because this isn't going to copy the chunk. Yeah, so maybe that doesn't make sense. Maybe that never made sense to try and take the reference of that. Not that it matters, because it just dereferences to the same memory anyways. But the point that I was trying to make is that I think Casey's actually about to run into this thing, because he's going to want to allocate the tiles, right, as we're iterating through and trying to set them. Is that right? Like allocating them on the fly? I actually don't know if that's the case, but I shouldn't be so harsh on myself. I'm trying really hard here to really grok what's happening, but let's see what happens.
We store these tile chunks. A tile chunk right now, I think we set it so that it was basically 16 on a side, is what I believe we set it to. Yeah, that's what we set it to here. And so basically what we were doing is
Yeah, no, I don't think he is. That's why I got stuck, because his was running. Mine's still not running.
Creating 16 by 16 chunks. We created, however, 128 by 128 of them. So we basically made a big block of these chunks. And each one of them basically gets filled in, so it's the same, it's exactly the same as if...
Oh, I see what you're saying. The way that he's breaking up the for loops is an affront to your eyes. I gotcha. Yeah, I don't know. It's all just code, man.
If we had just right off the bat made a giant tile map that was, oops, 128 times 16, that was 2048 by 2048, right? That's basically all we did, was we made a 2048 by 2048 tile map. So what we want to do now is start to store that sparsely. So the simplest thing we can possibly do here is say that instead of having tile chunks always have their tiles in them, the tile chunks just won't have the tiles yet. So instead of doing this spin over the array, where we actually sort of, this right here that does this allocation to actually put tiles into the tile chunks, we're just not going to allocate them. We're just not going to do that step, right? Instead, what we're going to do is when we actually need to set a tile value, when the tile chunk actually sort of...
Oh. So he's just going to wipe all that code out, huh?
This right here that does this allocation to actually put tiles into the tile chunks, we're just not going to allocate them. We're just not going to do that step, right? Put where we actually just instead of do now, right? That's basically if we basically what we were doing is we're creating right for it. So that's on as a to do when we for when.
So it definitely works for him, and he definitely rips that code out. But I don't know if he's just gonna go ahead and paste it inside of that other call, but it's not gonna look like this. He's gonna see that a tile chunk is empty and nothing is there yet, and then he's gonna allocate it on the fly, right? But I still need to figure out why I can't get this far. And you know, maybe that'll just be a problem for tomorrow, not sure. Yeah, so his runs. And I can't figure out why mine isn't, so it makes me think that something else is going pretty wrong here. I just keep looking at it, hoping that I'll make sense of the problem. Well, here's one issue, which I don't know if it actually means anything, is that he is doing the tile chunk count Y in the outside for loop. So if I just move those around, I think... But it doesn't matter because it's the same dimensions. You know, X and Y are the same across the tile chunk. It's just one big square tile set. So, yeah. I guess what I should have done, and I've done this before, it's nasty. It feels like just such an uncivilized way of figuring out what is going on. But I'll print and then I'll panic. Oops. Right? Of course I gotta re-import format. Okay, fine. It doesn't want me to just put in a panic that's always gonna trip, so I'll say if true is true, panic. I'm starting to panic, all right, because it sure looks like all the tiles are in there, you know, and that is where we're crashing, right? I should verify. No. How did this happen? Hold on. Where are we crashing? Because now I thought it was at that line. I thought I verified it was at that line. So are we just allocating too many? And that makes sense because it was printing out all of the tiles that we were successfully able to get into. So we get to, what is the tile index when we fail? Whoops. Well, yeah, no, all it means, right, is that I don't know how to do this without... I must be calculating... something very wrong here. Yeah, this is a nasty one to untangle. Short of being able to easily recognize where I messed this up, which I don't think I'm going to be able to do in any reasonable amount of time. But it just sure seems to me like we're running out of memory, and we're allocating the total amount of memory in our arena and then some, and then so we're getting nothing back. But I would have thought it would have failed, right? If we failed to allocate hold on. Well, what was this original value? This was like 8. And I think this was just 4 by 4. Is that right? Oh, now I'm asserting in tile. Yeah. And I think that's the place that we're trying to get to with Casey, but I'm hitting this other problem. That's why there was nothing there at that line that made sense. I was looking in the wrong file. So that's what this is saying. And then, yeah. When we go to that screen to try and draw the tile, there's nothing there, because we haven't allocated enough. And I swear he must have changed that during this day of coding. The chunk shift and the tile chunk count. Or maybe even yesterday, and I wasn't paying attention then. Whoops. Because I was zooming through the day yesterday quite a bit. And in my haste, I could have easily missed that change. Push that slice of tile chunks on. We start stepping through the total count of tile chunks, which is 128 by 128. We get in. We pull out that tile chunk index, which, yeah, that's right. It's the Y we're on multiplied by the total width of the chunk plus the index X chunk that we're on. Sorry, indexing Y into the list, list of tile chunks in the tile map times the number of tile chunks across the whole world plus the X index of the tile chunk. Pull the tile count in that whole chunk out that we want to allocate, the whole number of them. Get the tile chunk out. make the tiles, the whole number of tiles that we want, and then set through them. And we are doing it successfully. Otherwise, it makes perfect sense that the way it hangs up on that loop, just printing out the list of tiles over and over and over again. So yeah, why isn't he hitting that problem? I'm just going to let him cruise here for a minute and then see if this becomes obvious to me, what is going on here, where I messed up. And I got to unmute him first.
When we actually need to store tiles there, if that makes sense. Instead of, right now I've got this thing which basically pre-allocates. It's basically as if we just did one giant array. It's not sparse at all. So now it's time, we've done all the work, now it's time to actually make our tile map sparse, right? And so I'm just going to quickly, because I know this is a lot of stuff for people who've never done this before. So what we were doing, right, is we store these tile chunks. A tile chunk right now, I think we set it so that it was basically 16 on a side, is what I believe we set it to. Yeah, that's what we set it to here. And so basically what we were doing is we're creating 16 by 16 chunks. We created, however, 128 by 128 of them. So we basically made a big block of these chunks. And each one of them basically gets filled in. So it's the same, it's exactly the same as if we had just right off the bat made a giant tile map that was, 128 times 16. That was 2048 by 2048, right? That's basically all we did, is we made a 2048 by 2048 tile map. So what we want to do now is start to store that sparsely. So the simplest thing we can possibly do here is say that instead of having tile chunks always have their tiles in them, the tile chunks just won't have the tiles yet. So instead of doing this spin over the array where we actually sort of, this right here that does this allocation to actually put tiles into the tile chunks, we're just not going to allocate them. We're just not going to do that step, right? Instead, what we're going to do is when we actually need to set a tile value, when the tile chunk comes back, if there wasn't a tile chunk, if that tile chunk didn't have any tiles in it, then what we'll do, basically say if tile chunk tiles is not initialized, we'll initialize it right there. So right there at the time when we go to do it, we will, that is when, right? When we actually find that we're trying to set the value of a tile chunk that doesn't have any tiles in it, that's when we'll do it. And similarly, I think...
So it makes sense to me that we would allocate too many tiles and then use up all the memory in our arena. Doesn't make sense to me that having allocated the same amount of memory for our arena as Casey, that we'd be hitting it where he's not. So maybe there's some other input here that has just kind of screwed me up. I think this is going to go here. Yeah, instead of looking for that, whatever that issue is, wherever it is in this code base now, I'm going to hopefully get things working again here, because we'll be going back to not using all of our memory. And then we can kind of at least be caught up with Casey, and then I can do some investigation to see where things went potentially terribly wrong.
What we want to do is when we do a get tile value, we similarly want to say if the tile chunk tiles are there, because we want to
So in here, after this assert, where we assert that the chunk itself is not nil, right? And can we make that a pointer now? I didn't even stop to think about that. Get tile chunk. Yeah, this can actually be a pointer now. After I spent all that time explaining why I couldn't return a pointer from this function yesterday. Again, just because of the whole multi-pointer thing. I didn't think that not using multi-pointers would be this consequential to getting me tripped up. But I think it's good because it's forcing me to understand. It's forcing me to really figure out what is the thing we're working on. How do we do it? It's just, man, is it embarrassing to screw up this hard. So if our tile chunk, well, yeah, so if tile chunk's tiles now are nil, then we go ahead and allocate that. We already have the chunk, so we don't need the chunk index. And then tile count is still on the tile map, or chunk dim is, so we can get the tile count still. Don't need to do that. And then in here, what's going on with this? This should be inside of that if. Yeah. Yeah. And then like he was saying, we're going to have to check to make sure the tiles are not nil as well somewhere. Oh yeah, so this doesn't take a pointer, or rather it already is a pointer. We don't need to take the address of it.
That's when we'll do it. And similarly, I think what we want to do is when we do a get tile value, we similarly want to say if the tile chunk tiles are there, because we want to always do that as well. There we go. Set tile value.
So that's in get tile value. Well, where he gets the chunk. Tile. Is that right? Is this the one? Really getting tripped up with my different naming schemes now too. Yeah, because this calls the get tile value unchecked. And it's here where we want to check to make sure that tile chunk dot tiles are also not nil. Or that would be an oopsie. Yeah, and then right down here. That's right. Same thing.
To always do that as well. There we go. Set tile value. We'll check that as well. Now, set tile value really probably doesn't need to call this this checked one here, but I don't know. Well, we'll leave it there for now, just in case. And this doesn't need to be there either. That's just some copy pasta, as people on the stream like to say. Anyway, so what we're going to do is, if we find that there's no tiles, we're going to initialize them right here. We're just going to basically do, okay, we have this tile chunk, right? We're going to do the same thing we were doing before, but now the tile chunk will be...
Whoops. Gotta not take the address of that too.
Allocated just in time. So as soon as we try to write into a tile chunk that hasn't had any tiles allocated for it yet, we're going to go ahead and say, make those tiles right now, push them onto that arena that we've been passed, which is where we're supposed to store them, right? We need to know what that tile count is. Again, that tile count value is defined by our chunk dim, right? That chunk dim, it's just the chunk dim squared, right? It's just because we're everything square at the moment. So our tile count is just that chunk dim squared. We're going to allocate that. We're going to go over the tiles, and we are going to go ahead and fill them all in with one, right? Makes sense. So that's all I'm going to do. That's it. Nothing particularly tile chunk. There we go. What's the problem? Push array, right. So now we actually have to loft that arena stuff up a little bit because I had just kind of declared it right where it needed to be, but actual people are starting to use it now. So this stuff...
Actual people. Okay, so we're back in a working order, and rather than allocating the whole darn thing, we only make the tiles that we care to make based on where we're generating the world. And I feel really bummed out, even though it's working and we did what we set out to do, but I'm just not feeling good about how I wasn't able to allocate the 100 screens worth of tiles in the chunk dimensions that he was specifying, like the same way he was doing. It makes me think that I've screwed something up. At first I thought, well, I guess it's not impossible that my arena code... why am I over here? I want to go over here. It's possible that my arena code was bad. I could have easily screwed something up here where maybe for some reason I didn't set up the arena right, and therefore I don't have all the memory that I should be having. But that just seems pretty messed up that I couldn't get all the tiles, all the same amount of tiles. So I need to look into that. I don't even know how much was left in this day. Quite a bit, half a day left. Maybe I'll try and wrap it up tomorrow. Maybe I'll try and wrap it up later tonight. I don't know. Is reference to tilemap.tilechunks tile index treated like address of... I see what you're saying. So is it treated like a reference to the tile chunks at the chunk index, or... Oh, no, sorry. Is it treated like a reference to the the tile map and then dot tile chunks at tile index, or is it a reference to the actual chunk at the index that we're indexing at? I'm pretty sure it's the former. And I mean, I guess if I had reason to doubt that, it would be when that was in here, wasn't it? No, we're not even doing this here. Yeah, no, we did do that in here. This was tile map right here, right? This is what you're saying. Is it this, or is it I mean, we could test that out right now. So that looks like that is working still. I bet this wouldn't work. It does work. Hold the phone. Well, you know what? Yeah, I just did that wrong. This, yeah. So it doesn't even compile if I do that. Yeah. So yeah. But it is tricky. Like once we start calling tiles, right? Tile index. That's what's tripping me up. Partially. But I think I'm getting hung up on the wrong thing is what it comes down to. Because this really just seems like we're trying to generate too many. Where's my screens thing? Where did, yeah. So for 100 screens, right? Well, before we even get to that code, we generate, or rather we allocate all the tiles ahead of time, and it's not sparse, right? Like that's the benefit of doing what we've been trying to do this whole stream so far, is allocate just in time, so that if the chunk isn't there when we're trying to put stuff into the world, right? We're trying to procedurally generate the world. We go and create that memory for that piece of the world to exist right there, versus doing it all up front and then being naive about it that way. So the important thing is that I can just watch this back, figure out what I may have done wrong here. I feel like it should be jumping out at me, because it doesn't seem like something that should be failing. This just doesn't seem right. So maybe there's a print. I do not have my, how was I searching for print? Searching for format. Where's my format so I can print? Like at which point in the big old list of chunks here that we're making, and they're tiles, I guess. We already have all the chunks. We want to make all the tiles inside of those chunks. We're getting to the very end. Is that right? No. Oh, no, not even close. We're getting to the 32nd row of chunks. So there's got to be something else going on here. Maybe the chunk dim, but I could have sworn that he had the chunk dim still set to 256. Oh my goodness. Ugh. All this time, I missed a change that he made. Again, failing very badly to pay attention. This was all he did, right? He changed this so that it isn't. He did change the chunk dim. For this whole time I've been looking at the problem right in front of my face, and I just don't know how to read. Reading is an ever underappreciated skill. Highly recommend. And you also, have a good enough attention span to where you don't miss changes happening right in front of your face. He made all those changes, and I just didn't see it. Okay. This feels better now. Now I understand what was going on. I knew there was some little detail, and this was it right here. So with all of that being said, that is enough shame for one evening. I will see what else he even does. I'll skim ahead and see how much more coding he does. It looks like there's a good amount, so maybe I'll just pick back up where I left off from tomorrow, because I don't think I'm going to have time to jump up to day 36 from here. So it is what it is. Thanks for hanging out and watching me struggle. Let's do it again tomorrow. Peace out.